Hi, everyone. Welcome to Reflections of a Rebel Mom, where we celebrate and empower mothers who defy societal norms and embrace their unique parenting journey. Join us as we explore real stories of pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting through the unexpected. Expect candid conversations, insightful advice, and inspiring stories from moms who navigate the challenges and triumphs of motherhood in their own rebellious way. Tune in to be inspired, informed, and connected to a community of bold and resilient mothers. Today we have Courtney joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Courtney Williams. I am a startup founder. My company is Imagine Solutions Technology. We're in the maternal health field, actually. And I am the mom of two very young kiddos, and I live in Arizona.
And then this is the question I ask every mom. What makes you a rebel mom?
Well, first of all, what does being a rebel mom mean to me? It means kind of going against societal norms. And, in my case, it's not really so typical to see a woman do a startup business while also going through a pregnancy or multiple pregnancies. And so this is kind of more for me. I've navigated this challenge and being a business owner and being a mom and wearing all these different hats. And I think that that is a little bit rebelling against kind of what society expects for us.
Definitely, definitely. I love that. I think our story of how we met is like one in a million. It had to be divine, some form of extra outer thing that brought us together. Can you share like the day you found me, and then I'll share like my side of how it went once you connected with me?
Oh, definitely. That sounds great. So we both being in Arizona, both being maternal health enthusiasts, I would say,
Yeah.
and really passionate about this field. So we went to the West Valley Birth Collective and collaborative meeting that takes place, expo meeting, organization. There's so many ways to define this entity, right? And it's where essentially like a lot of different folks in the maternal health field come together twice a year in Glendale in Arizona, outdoors, as hot as it can be. And right, like we work to, educate uh, members of the community who are going through a pregnancy or currently postpartum or are planning to have a pregnancy about different services, about different products, and about different, medical journeys to expect along the way. And I don't know what great happenstance brought us together at two adjoining tables at that event, but I learned so much about you, about maternal health, and I kind of thought on a whim, like, hey, you know what? Let me reach out to Tasha and see if she'd be interested in working together. And I'm so glad that you were open to it and that you have an entrepreneurial spirit and vision, both in your own work as well as working with others and being a partner in the community. That we've had a number of different collaborations and are continuing to grow that as we both grow our businesses.
I remember the day I got the call from you, and I was like, "What is this?" I really thought I was like, "Is this spam? Is this someone spamming me?" But I remember so with that West Valley Birth Collective, that event I wasn't able to go to, but I reached out to the coordinator and was like, "Hey, can I get you some business cards?" And she was like, "Yeah, drop them off at my house." I'm like, "Do you even know me? Like, I'm a stranger on Facebook. You just," but I dropped them off at her house, and they put them in their bags, and you got their bag and then called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to work on this app?" So, can you tell me more about the app?
Sure, yeah, definitely. So our app is called the Journey Pregnancy, and it is an app that's a free resource on iOS and Google Play to help women that are going through a pregnancy journey. It is to help them log and track their own maternal health from their positive pregnancy test all the way through their postpartum recovery. This is an app where people can log their blood pressure, their blood glucose, and all these other different elements, their symptoms that maybe they might not be keeping track of in their other apps, but this is a place for them to be able to keep track of their maternal health and be able to advocate for themselves, share the information with their provider, and have a more informed pregnancy as they go through that process.
When did you develop this idea and how did that idea come about? That's an amazing feat. Like, I'm in healthcare and I don't think I want to build an app. I'm like, absolutely not.
Well, you're a provider. It's a separate thing, right?
I would like for you to build me an app. That's what I would like.
Well, theoretically, that's what we're kind of hoping to do long term is that this could be a tool for both the patients and their providers and make life essentially easier for providers to take continued great care of patients that are pregnant or want to be or recently were. And the reason that this app came about 3 years ago, during the height of COVID, actually, I got preeclampsia right after giving birth. It's like 5 days after giving birth. I got this blinding headache that wouldn't go away, and I was feeling chest pain. And when I got up to try to go get the mail a couple days after getting my C-section, after coming home from the C-section, I'm feeling like shortness of breath like I'd never felt before. And I was on the phone with my mom. I was like, this is happening. I just really don't feel right. She's like, you sound like you're having a medical emergency. You need to go to the hospital right away. And I did. And it turned out it was postpartum preeclampsia. And if I hadn't gotten medical help when I did, if I let that go longer, that's when you see like these really bad outcomes. People, you hear about the story of like Tori Bowie, who died of eclampsia during pregnancy. And there's so many other people that are affected, one every 20 pregnancies. And so I realized that condition wasn't unique to me, that a lot of people go through it. And I wanted to make a tool to make life easier for folks to make sure that they could, if they were pregnant, that they could not go through what I went through, that they could actually have a document of their pregnancy, do that themselves so that they knew what symptoms to look for and they would receive alerts if their numbers got out of range.
Oh, I love that. What year was this that you developed the idea?
So the idea came about in 2020 when I had my son, right after I had my son. And, everybody's going through COVID and everything. It was really hard to get in and talk to your provider and be able to have that dialogue, especially in the postpartum period. It didn't make sense why I was going into the doctor's office to do just blood pressure checks when that I could have done that at home and communicate that information to my provider remotely. And that's where the idea came about. Of course, then it took time to interview people that had also gone through similar pregnancy situations and then to develop the app and build it and then later get, funding for it. So it's been a process for sure.
And this isn't your first creation technology wise, is it?
It is not. No, thank you for mentioning that. So actually, my company first started off as a company to develop handheld ultrasound. So we developed a technology to essentially plug in an ultrasound probe into a phone and be able to scan on a mobile device. Obviously, this technology isn't, necessarily new, but ours is proprietary, FDA cleared, works in low resource settings, and our idea behind it initially was to accommodate the 50% of the world does not have access to basic ultrasound equipment.
Oh, so who's been using your ultrasounds?
So it's interesting. We initially developed it for like low resource settings. And so right now, the majority of folks that use it are nonprofits that then work overseas. It's like US based nonprofits that have various overseas projects. We have a number of different customers that fit that profile that work in different places, Haiti, Bolivia, Togo, Argentina, Dominican Republic, lots of different places that have varying levels of access to this equipment that we take so for granted here.
And can providers acquire this equipment?
They can indeed, yeah. Our technology is called VistaScan, and they can, contact us to purchase one of three different types of FDA cleared ultrasound probes that work with our app. They download the VistaScan app. It's an Android facing technology, and it's for providers. So I, as a layperson, not a provider, I can't just go and get this. You have to be a licensed provider to be able to utilize it or work under the guidance of a provider. And they can just contact us at Imagine Solutions Technology on our website to learn more.
Let's go back to your first pregnancy. You had preeclampsia, but it was postpartum. Did you have any complications like during your pregnancy at all? Like that maybe gave you an idea that you might have had something come up in the end?
But when you go through a pregnancy for the first time, you don't really know what's normal. And so, every little thing, it's like, oh, is this normal? Is this not? Carpal tunnel, is that normal in pregnancy? Is that not? That was a weird symptom that I dealt with that I wasn't expecting and wasn't really ready for. The the headaches though didn't come until after the birth. They didn't come until after my C-section. Similarly, the chest pain that and the shortness of breath that didn't come until after birth. The only clue I had during pregnancy was how swollen I was, especially the last, say, I don't know, 8, 10 weeks. My body really just swole. It was super, super swollen. So much more so. It was painful to walk on those swollen ankles. And so I thought, this doesn't look great. But everybody keeps saying, you know, when you deliver, the liquid your body retains will dissipate, etc. It just did not in my case.
And with that, did you have any like emotional problems afterwards during your postpartum period? Do you feel like you may have experienced any postpartum?
Yeah, I think emotionally, it's hard to know what was the pandemic versus what was the pregnancy, right? I mean, I think it's fair to probably say that we all went through a lot during those years, that during that time frame. And so, yeah, it was very tough to find support, to find services. I think postpartum in general is an extraordinarily lonely time for many, many people.
Yeah.
And you're seeing your doctor, your provider, so much as it accelerates as your pregnancy goes on. And then boom, you give birth and it drops off. You're on your own for 6 weeks before you see somebody to make sure that you're okay and you can resume normal activities or normal life, whatever that even means. And I I think that that is a sad and lonely time. And I definitely myself felt that it was life was so much harder during postpartum than I was expecting it was going to be, for sure. The I do see the contrast though with my second baby that I just had about 3 months ago, and it was like night and day in terms of mood and getting through and understanding what to do and feeding and pumping and all those things. I The extra experience helped, but also knowing what to look for postpartum depression, et cetera, and postpartum mood. I was more on alert the second time, especially because it's become more of our national conversation than it was before.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your second pregnancy. How did that one go?
I was nervous because I was older
Wow.
and I was already a quote unquote, a over 35 mom, shall I say, a geriatric pregnancy, which is the term we all love, the first time around. And then I was super geriatric the second time around. And I was definitely cognizant of that. More testing, more screenings, more all the things, more attention, more high risk. And so I was careful to be super diligent about my vitamins and the food that I was eating. And I think the second pregnancy was easier because I had more of a sense of what was normal and what wasn't.
Okay. And did you have any complications with the second pregnancy?
All through, I took a baby aspirin on the recommendation of my doctor to avoid preeclampsia again, because we didn't want to do that again.
Yeah.
And at about 36 weeks plus or minus, that's when you start to it was a planned C-section because my first one was a C-section. So I knew, all right, I'm going to deliver via C-section on this date and this time, this doctor, all the things. And at 36 weeks I stopped taking the baby aspirin because you're not supposed to be on blood thinners before
Mm,
a surgery,
okay.
right?
Okay.
And lo and behold, started to swell up a little bit again. And unfortunately, the C-section itself again went great. It actually went better the second time than it did the first. I knew to hydrate the day before. I was just going into it more informed. And lo and behold, the day that I was set to be released from the hospital, I got this blinding headache. And it
Mm.
was the worst headache of my life. And they did some tests. And unfortunately, I got preeclampsia again. And so I had an extended hospital stay, and now, I'm recovered. It took a long time for my blood pressure to normalize, and I'm over 3 months out now, and it's normal. But now I know that I'm at a much higher risk for future cardiac events through the rest of my life. And so this means I've completely had to change my diet and my outlook on taking care of myself and making sure I take care of myself for my family.
What support services have you utilized during your pregnancies and after?
So there are a lot of support services if you know where to look.
That's the
And
key.
that's the key, right? Like, how do you find out about services usually? Is it like word of mouth, or maybe your pediatrician has has a thought that you can follow up on, but you know, support services range, right? Okay, so support for should we start with the mom first, the support services, or should we start with the kid? Because they're two separate worlds, right?
Oh. Yeah, what services did you use as a mom?
So as a mom, I wish I had actually access. This is going to sound interesting, but bear with me here. I wish I had had access to my app and also had access to pregnancy wellness coaching, because that would have really helped normalize the whole process, and it would have made me feel less alone. So I wish I'd had access to you, frankly, before before embarking on all this. I Some of the support services that are offered, like within the state even, so for example, for folks with like speech delays, like my son, I thought maybe there might be a speech delay, and our pediatrician agreed. And you know, there, what is that caused by? Is it because we are bilingual in our house and there's a language delay because of that? Is that because there's a developmental delay? There are all these questions that enter into your mind. And so one of the great support services that we heard about, and here in our state in Arizona, is called AZIP. And this is a program that, you know, helps with like motor skills, like fine motor skills, gross motor skills, speech therapy. They have a wide range of services that are free to folks that qualify in the state. And we were able to really utilize the speech therapy services, and they were extraordinarily helpful. Um, that was one great example. Do you, what are some other ones that I'm forgetting that we should talk about?
Yeah, so as far as the mother goes, there's a lot of different services like a doula. You could hire a doula during your pregnancy. And then now they're having like so many different variations of doulas, postpartum doulas. So if you're not really having an issue with your pregnancy and you're like, I'm fine, but then you experience something during the postpartum period, they have doulas. You could do midwifery, a midwife, if you don't want to go the traditional route and you're having a healthy pregnancy.
Mhm.
Then you could also reach out to Postpartum Support International. They have a lot of resources for moms going through the postpartum period. And I would just look through the like your Department of Health. They probably have like resources and services depending on what is going on. Always reach out to your provider if you're having like a mental health problem, if it's physical or other services that unfortunately aren't yet covered by insurances. Like pelvic floor therapy is really good for moms if you're experiencing trouble, especially after a C-section or a vaginal delivery and you're maybe having some urinary incontinence, or if it's just not as the muscles need to recover and rejuvenate. So physical therapy is another one. Chiropractic therapy is another service that you can look into. Unfortunately, most of it's not covered by insurances, but it definitely is something to look into if you need that extra support. Mom support groups. I am in a twin mom support group for Phoenix Valley mothers of multiples, and we're all moms of twins, triplets, quadruplets, however high you go um, in that category. You could join like that group. So I would definitely look into whatever you may have been experiencing. There's going to be support groups for it, like preeclampsia. I'm sure there's support groups for moms that have experienced that. With the developmental delays, I would always start with your pediatrician. But the one thing I liked about like AZIP and there's another one, Southwest Human Development, they are self-referrals. And a lot of people don't know that you can self-refer to have your child evaluated for something. And it usually is covered by the state or your insurance. So there's a lot of different options for you. And they come, and I remember you mentioning speech therapy. My son had speech therapy. And I remember when they first came to my house, and I'm like, these people are in my house, they're judging me, they're looking at me, they're trying to figure out why my kid isn't talking. And like you said, you don't know, is this dual, like a dual language? So is he having a hard time transitioning back and forth, which eventually in the future it will be great for him. But developmentally, it may be a challenge for him to like figure out which way he's trying to articulate his concerns. For me, I found out for my son, it was like when he was a baby, he had a hard time gaining weight. So he was on a schedule. And as he became a toddler, it was just that schedule never changed. His breakfast, lunch, snacks were always readily available. He didn't have to ask for anything. He was an only child. And it was one of those things I was like, oh, so you're saying it's a mommy fault. And I'm saying that very lightheartedly. And I did say that to her. And she's like, no, it's not your fault. But some kids just need that extra push. And he personality wise, he's still a very quiet kid. So it's also one of those, did he just not want to talk? Did he not have anything to say? Because we did the services for about 5 months, and once we started forcing him to ask for stuff, and all these words just started popping out of his vocabulary, and I was like, "How did you know that word?" So it's definitely a good thing to reach out, but it can be like a vulnerable time when you have someone coming to evaluate your child, and then if you find out that the reason for it is something else that's more like a disability, then you have to start going through like the process of other services, and then dealing with that emotionally can be a challenge.
Definitely. And also seems like there's so much variation like state to state. Like if you have like a friend or family member that's gone through that situation before and you need some advice or some help or something, there's just such a wide variety of what's available place to place. And then that can make it also challenging to try to find the right support that you need in your area. So yeah, it's a lot.
So now that we're talking about balancing, what is some of the things that you could share that you do to help balance you out between having a toddler, an infant, a business, two businesses, kind of technically?
So in terms of balancing, so one of the things I'm trying to learn and trying to apply as much as I can is like blocking my time as much as possible. So, you've got your family life and you've got your business and your professional life, right? And when I can, I try to separate them as much as I can. So that way I'm sort of showing up as my best person, if you will, for each of those roles, right? So aside from like blocking time on my calendar and then also like making sure that like I'm taking care, like physically, I'm taking care of me as much as I can so that I can show up as that best version of myself in those situations. I'm trying to prioritize as much as I can now after the second pregnancy to focus on all aspects of my health, my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health, so that I can make self-care like a priority. And like I think that that is really, really important. I think people feel bad about doing that as parents, as moms,
Yeah.
especially like we feel bad, right? But no, I think that that should actually be job one so that we are the best caretakers we can be for this next generation.
Describe what blocking your schedule would look like for you, like a day of your schedule. How would that look?
So when I mean blocking, like I'm literally actually like putting like gym time on my calendar, like reminding
Oh,
myself, yes, or like literally like putting time to like walk the dog. And I no, seriously, I know that sounds it sounds a little bit like extreme, but that way I know at least I feel like I'm able to get through the things I need to get through every day and not make excuses to myself for why I didn't do them. And then I make sure that there is a time allotment for those things to all get completed. So typical day, I wake up early and try to check my email and get that out of the way, at least initially, right?
emails.
Yes. Then it's like family time. And then so that block ends and it's like family timing and getting kid breakfast together and making sure everybody eats. And then, making sure that my son gets to preschool on time and in the best mindset possible. And then coming back from preschool, then I've got gym time right then and there on my way
Mm,
back so that I make sure that that is taken care of and that's done. And then that block ends and then I start the rest of it. Then I start my work day and I try to be as productive as I can during those hours, the work hours.
yeah,
Then it's time to, pick up and then dinner and then
yeah.
the night we've got more time for work there. So that's what I mean by blocking the day.
What's your favorite self-care routine or thing, something that you do daily for yourself?
It used to be dance. I used to be really, 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 really into like cardio dance and taking dance classes and things like that, or Zumba, things like that. I love it. But now I've actually found that I'm finding more benefit from blood pressure perspective and also just from like a, you know, a mindfulness and calming perspective, yoga has been really, really helpful for helping.
I
So I do it every single day, even if it's 10 minutes or even if it's 30, I find time to do yoga.
I
What
love.
about you? What works? What's a good practice that you love in your life that you find helpful?
For me, it's definitely I need quiet. Like I didn't realize how sensitive I was to noise and having a house full of kids is very noisy. So if I could just like sometimes just waking up 5 minutes before everyone else and just laying there in silence. And I started doing like being grateful and thankful of everything that I have in those moments. I try to meditate every day. I'm not as consistent, but even with, like I said, the 5 minutes in the morning or sometimes at night when everyone is not talking and it's quiet, I'm laying in bed, I'll just kind of do a breathing to help me go to sleep. Yoga is one of my favorites. And I've recently got into, which I never thought I would, kind of like hit cardio. Me and my husband started working out together, and I like yoga and bar and those kind of things, and he's not really into that. So I started working out with him in his programs, and it's a lot of like burpees and things. I'm like, I hate doing this stuff. And in the minute and after I'm realizing how strong I'm getting and how much endurance I have now. And sometimes when I go and do something, when I used to be like, oh, I can't walk that far. And now I'm walking faster than I used to. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not even walking consistently, but it's the workout. So the workouts definitely have been for me changing, and it gives me that time. And I used to was like, I want to be the mom that works out with her kids. And I realized that is not me. I am not the mom that works out with her kids. For one, I don't like working out. Like I really just I'm not a physical like I don't like doing it. I don't know why. I just it's not something that is but in the moment I do enjoy it and I enjoy it after, but I don't want any distractions. I really need to focus because then I'm gonna start getting frustrated. So I'm not that mom, and I have accepted that. I was like, okay, we're better in other areas, but you can work out by yourself. I will help you work out. I will let you get on the treadmill and all those kind of things. But in the moment while I'm doing it, no, I don't. I don't. So let's talk about what is one of your, because we talked about some of your challenges and things, but what has been like your favorite moments in motherhood?
I think my favorite moments so far are the moments that like we as adults take great for granted and then having that jolt of like reminder like, oh, there is so much magic in everyday life and kids remind us of that. So, and I don't even think people have to be a mom or a parent to even experience that. So, for example, one of the things like planting sunflowers with my kiddo, he's all about the gardening. He's so excited to water the plants. And so one of my favorite things about motherhood has been like, literally like planting a garden with him, planting sunflower seeds with him, helping teach him how to water them and seeing them grow and then getting his excitement about the growth. And it's just such a beautiful metaphor for him as a person, planting his own seeds of joy and excitement in his life and watching those seeds grow for him. So that's one of the things. And then, doing sports is another favorite thing that I have as a parent. So my son's in soccer and he is so excited when he makes a goal and seeing little toddlers try to run around the field and play soccer. It's just so much fun to see things that we take for granted as adults, finding that they have so much joy and that joy transfers directly to us. So those are some of my joys. What about you?
The sports, yeah, definitely. Seeing their interests and start to learning their personalities, what they like. That has been the most enjoyable for me. Even as babies, like just filling out their personalities and just watching them grow. And now that they're more active, being involved in their day to day, going to school and hearing about their stories and hearing about their classmates and their friends and then taking them to their extracurricular activities. That's been one of my favorite parts, definitely.
I love that. And you guys have a lot of extracurricular activities. So yes, that is a goal and it's a beautiful thing for other folks like us to live through and watch your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, how do you stay resilient or and motivated during like challenging times?
So the yoga helps. Being completely honest, the yoga really, really does help because it just kind of centers me and it it kind of like brings me back into the present. Don't think too far in the past, don't think too far in the future. Focus on the present. And I think that's important as a parent to focus on the present because the past and the future become so distant so quickly. And then also like kind of what you were talking about as well, like spending moments to be grateful and just how much we all in general in life have to be grateful for. And so I've include like we include that it's like part of our family now. And so I
Yeah.
asked my son, hey, what makes you happy? Like, what are you grateful for? And hearing him process those thoughts and express what, in this case, what somebody 4 years old is grateful for is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Your responses are hilarious. You're like, okay. And then sometimes they'll give you like an elaborate one that you're not expecting. You be like, where did that come from? But that's a great one.
Totally, totally, totally. Yeah, yeah. So I think that those are ways, my two main ways to stay resilient and sort of stay motivated, just being in the present.
I love that. So, what is one advice you would give a mom who is currently in a similar situation as you? Maybe have kids, starting a business, have family, all of the things. What advice would you give someone?
Well, let's see here. So everyone's life is different. So I would just say that first and foremost, you know, my advice, take it with a grain of salt or less, right? But I think that that's really like true even more so when people become parents. And I think the maybe the piece of this takeaway that I got from somebody else that I want to pass along, that I'm using and I want to pass along, is I be who you are and like don't apologize. And I think that that is really key. Once you become a parent, like all of a sudden you're like confronted with all these decisions. There's so many decisions as a parent, right? Like first and foremost, like, are you going to breastfeed? Are you going to pump? Are you going to use formula? And like there are all of these societal norms attached to all of these things. There are judgments attached to all of these things. And sometimes you just got to just do the best you can and not judge. And specifically, don't judge yourself. Like, don't apologize, don't judge yourself, and just do what works best for you. You know what works best for you, and be okay with that. And I think that that is the one piece of advice that I would give to somebody going through similar day to day.
Well, thank you for that advice. I'm going to take it because I am the worst critic of myself, aren't we all? But
Yes.
definitely to keep that in mind, like, do not judge yourself because you think about, well, I don't judge other people. I let people do what they want. But how often are you in your head saying, like, I should have did this. I didn't do that. I should have played more. I should have did this more. I wish I had done that. So definitely give yourself grace and know that you're doing the best. And your kids probably don't halfway recognize the mistakes you made until you point it out. Like, ooh, like when you have to go apologize. That one. I'm sorry, mommy was a little. I didn't play with you today, but mommy was needing time alone. And knowing that that's okay, like, and expressing it to them, like, hey, today's not a good day. I'm tired. Like, I started implementing rest days, like, especially after like a long block of things that we've been doing or I've been doing. And I'm like, today's a rest day. So that means you find something to do for yourself. Mommy's not playing. Mommy is going to relax. You go play, you do whatever, just don't burn down the house. Um, but it's a rest day. And it started out like rocky because they didn't understand it. But now when I say it, they're like, I hate rest days. I'm like, I don't, but go have fun. Go find something to do. But they know now. And now they're like, or sometimes if I wake up and they're like, Mom, is this a rest day? And I was like, you know what? I feel like it could be. Yeah. Let's let's do that.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And understanding that you don't have to do everything all the time, every day.
Definitely. Oh yeah. Yes, we are. You're absolutely right. We are our own worst critic or most harsh critic. And that's, yeah, the grace is important.
Well, thank you for joining me. How can our viewers find you?
Yeah. Well, if we want to connect. I love connecting with people in this space and that are like in it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we all have so much to learn from each other. And I am an open book and want to learn and want to connect with other people too. So for our company on Instagram, you can connect at Imagine S Tech. on Instagram, and that's Imagine with an E. And then also to learn more about our app, it's the Journey Pregnancy on TikTok. And so we put out a lot of content on TikTok just to help normalize some of the things of pregnancy and help educate as well. So anyway, thanks so much for offering the forum to have these conversations and just, you know, talk about what it's like to go through these things. And I think we can all learn from one another.
Definitely. I enjoyed having you. Your
Yeah.
story has been very insightful. I've learned more about you today that I didn't know because I didn't really know like your full experience with your son with developmental delays, and I didn't know about your second pregnancy and preeclampsia. These last few months have been, I feel like this year is almost over, right?
Yes.
It is almost over, but I feel like I don't know where it went. But definitely, I enjoyed our conversation and thanks for being open and vulnerable and sharing and giving some advice. And you gave some definitely good advice that I'm going to take too.
Well, thank you for saying good advice. You get what you pay for, right? And here, it's free advice. So
Right?
thank
Yeah, you
you very
can't
much.
can't be free.
That's right. No, thank you so much again for having me on. I am so grateful to you, Tasha, for the work that you do and for the community that you create around maternal health and around, family health.
You as well. You're so inspirational. I'm like, oh, I love picking your brain about like business and technology. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.